Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hey, how are we?
All right,
Awesome.
cool. So tell us where you're at, and then tell them a little bit about yourself and where you're at.
Yeah, so my name's Chris Sainty. I'm a principal developer at a company called Deployed, which is a startup in London, and I'm also a Microsoft MVP as well. I've been writing software for probably about 15 years plus now. And I'm based in Norwich in the UK.
Okay, cool.
So my first question, what's a Microsoft MVP?
So Microsoft has a program called the MVP program, which it stands for Most Valuable Professional. And it's a community outreach program that recognizes outstanding technical community leaders, I think.
Oh, wow.
It is.
So you have to be awarded this then?
Yeah. So you kind of have to show what you've done for the last year and stuff, and then they sort of decide if you have to be nominated by someone from Microsoft or an existing MVP. So that's
awesome. Is this where Nadella shows up at your door, gives you the plaque like that? Is that the thing?
Not quite, if only. Okay. No, but yeah, you can probably see my where are we that side. So
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So you do actually get a plaque then. Oh, that's cool.
You get a little plaque and a little trophy with a little disc on it. I've just got my second one actually. So I managed to keep it for the second year, which is great. Because you kind of have to earn it every year. So
that's amazing.
Kevin was joking that they bring a sword in and they knight you.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I forgot. Yeah, Nadella shows up with the sword. Yeah, it's like a whole ceremony.
Yeah, not quite, I'm afraid. Not quite.
But you do get a plaque.
But you do get a plaque, so that's all good. So
that's cool.
Everyone likes a plaque.
Exactly.
So tell us your origin story. How did you get started in the coding? What's your superhero origin story from now to MVP?
So I first probably started coding when I was 16. Me and my best mate at school were into computers, and we started building little websites for a couple of little local businesses, sort of friends of our parents and things like that. That was with Classic ASP.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, going back there. So, so that kind of got me sort of the taste for it. And then went through college and did a sort of computer science degree and all this kind of stuff. And I wasn't sure whether hardware or software was where I wanted to be. And I joined a company that did a bit of both. Because back then, and this is showing my age now, you built your own PCs. You didn't go to Dell. You went to a local place who built you a bespoke computer. So I started my career building these bespoke computers, then moved on to building servers for sort of local businesses for that side of things, and doing networking and all of this kind of stuff. Which I suppose is like my first little cool thing along the way. We invented one of the first external wireless networks. So we had a 23-kilometer wireless network that went around the Norfolk coast. So my little claim to fame is I got my name on a patent as an inventor.
That's cool.
That was quite cool at like the age of 21. So 21, 22. It'd have been cooler if it had earned me some money, but
but it lives on forever.
Exactly. I'll take that. So we kind of did that, and we ran this. This was back again before broadband was a big thing. So we kind of had all these rural villages that we were trying to enable with broadband, because back then little villages weren't getting turned on because it was too expensive to lay the fiber to them, or not even fiber at that point, to be fair.
Right.
Just to enable the exchanges for broadband was just too much. So we kind of did that, and that was good, and that was fun. And then that all kind of went pop for a few different reasons that I won't go into, and found myself out of a job. So I was then kind of at this crossroads, really, where I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do now? Do I want to get into hardware, or do I want to go into software? And sort of about a year before the first version of .NET Framework came out. And my boss had asked me to do a bit of an investigation into it, because I quote, he thinks it might be quite big. So
I like it.
Yeah, so we've been doing VB6 up to that point. And I'll be honest, I hadn't done a lot of it. I didn't really know much about it, programming. So I kind of got into programming with .NET Framework, really, like as a professional anyway. And then I moved to a company here from there in the UK called Compare the Market, which is kind of like a big comparison site. So I worked there as one of the first .NET developers.
Is that the thing with the meerkat commercial?
The meerkat.
Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah. I got to show you this, Bobby. You're going to love this. I'll show you this afterwards. It's funny.
All right, check it out.
So yeah, so I went and worked for them for a little while. So that was my first sort of .NET job, like as a full-time programmer, doing nothing else. And then yeah, it's kind of just spun on from there really, and sort of just been sort of moving about a bit, doing various different jobs, all in the .NET stack really. Always had a bit of a leaning towards front end as well, I must admit. I've always kind of liked UI, so I've done a lot of work with JavaScript, CSS, HTML, worked with Angular JS, bit with Angular 2 and stuff like that. So yeah, I do have a serious leaning towards UI. So
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's awesome, man. So let me so let's talk Blazor. What's got you excited about Blazor? And for the audience here, tell us a little bit about what Blazor really is. Yeah,
cool. So I'll start with what it is, and then I'll tell you why I'm excited about it.
Okay, yeah.
So Blazor's a UI framework from the ASP.NET Core team. What is probably the easiest way to think of it is it's a single-page application framework at the likes of Angular or Vue, and it's designed to be basically a direct competitor to them. That's kind of the primary design goal, I think, is probably the fair way to say it. Blazor can also do a lot more, and we'll probably maybe go into that a little bit more later. But I think to keep things simple for now, that's the way to think of Blazor. So a single page application framework. The reason why I'm excited about it is because it's the missing bit of the puzzle for me as a .NET developer. As I mentioned a second ago, I've always been leaning towards UI, and I've always found it's the bit that's always been missing from the .NET space. So unpopular opinion, maybe, I don't know, but I was around when Silverlight was out. I don't like Silverlight. I really don't.
You said that, hold on, not liking Silverlight's an unpopular opinion?
Yeah, I don't know. Some people really like it, and I don't want to offend anybody. Like, not
amongst this group. I think Bobby also was burned by Silverlight, so I think we can say it's a safe space.
My fond memory is like when they came out. I think it wasn't Bill, but it was whatever they were doing before, and the guy walks out on stage in Microsoft and he goes, yeah, HTML5 is where we're going, and we're going to kill Silverlight. And like, I think the internet exploded. You know, so like, you're like, what do you mean? It was like this thrust upon us, and like oh, by the way, that Silverlight thing, we're not going to do it anymore.
That's not going to happen.
And then they backtracked for 3 weeks, but it was dead. You know, it's like it was dead.
Yeah, I don't think it was one of the finer moments as such. No. But I just, for me, I'll be honest, I'm not a XAML fan. I don't like XAML. Right. So Silverlight really didn't like get me at all. Right. And I'll be honest, there's a bit of me that, like I said, I do have a lot of like, I do spend a lot of time with the front end community, like say CSS, JavaScript, those kinds of things. Right. I felt it was a bit like, oh well, we're going to replace the front end of web because we don't really like it. So we're going to make it more like a desktop app. And that, I don't know, that niggled me a little bit from a personal perspective. That's how I kind of read it as a developer. And this was at the time, I would say. I get it now. But yeah, so that didn't really fly much for me. So that's probably the closest thing to a UI framework, maybe, that the .NET world's had. And as you mentioned, not for long.
Right, exactly.
Whereas Blazor is that it's a true UI framework, and it's, like I say, really we've not had one, not a proper one in the .NET world, at least as far as I would say. You know, others may have different opinions, but yeah, I mean, everything else like Razor Pages, MVC, things like that, you know, they're not UI frameworks. They're server-based frameworks for you know, generating HTML. They're, you know, largely speaking, fancy HTML generators, which again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not the same as working in the browser.
Right.
So I've kind of had a long period of my career where, like, when we moved from the server to more SPA framework stuff, I was learning, like I say, Angular and all those kinds of things, and doing jQuery and bits back then, because I couldn't stay in my ecosystem, the .NET ecosystem, and you know there wasn't any options really there. So Blazor excites me because I can use all the skills I have as a .NET developer, and you know, like I said, while I do have a leaning towards front end, I do love .NET full stack. And I really do enjoy working with C# and all these kinds of things. So Blazor lets me do all of those things that I love, use all the skills that I already have, but now I can build rich interactive UIs with it as well. So that's ticks a lot of boxes for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
So I like it too. Obviously, if you're writing full stack, we have to know JavaScript, and there's obviously Blazor's built on top of JavaScript, but like just type safety and the way two-way binding works in Me is so much simpler to do. And I don't think people understand it until they see a Blazor project, literally where you put an @ in the, I'm going to call it the front, but they're all on the front. And then you just write your little method or a property or even like a variable, and then those things are bound. And you don't do anything. It's kind of cool, in my opinion. It's like magic.
It is a bit, isn't it? And I think if you've got that C# background, I don't know what you found, but I find the learning curve has been very shallow. Like
zero.
You just get it.
Doing it. Yeah.
It's just like, oh, okay. So if I start everything with an @ I can do something from that.
Right. Exactly.
And that's it. It's like I can either create a handler, bind to an event, or spit out a variable, or write an expression or whatever. It doesn't matter. Just off I go.
And I'm correct in saying, from a user perspective, if I go to a web app or a page that's been written in Blazor, I can't tell, right? I don't. It doesn't matter to me, right? As a user, so it's like it's all on the person that's creating. It's that decision, right? Because it's all JavaScript at the end of the day, right? That's
no, not
or
quite.
Is it? No, it's not. Okay.
No. So it's based. Like, it has to use JavaScript. So
but I don't need a plugin, right? I don't need Silverlight.
No.
Plugin.
So no plugins. No plugins.
Okay. Right.
No, terrible. So no plugins, no fancy transpilation going on. It's not like you're writing C# code and it's actually getting compiled somehow magically into JavaScript. That's not happening. So in Blazor WebAssembly, you're writing C# code that gets compiled to normal .NET DLLs. And then there's a .NET runtime that's compiled to a language called WebAssembly, hence where Blazor WebAssembly gets its name from. And that gets downloaded into the browser along with your DLLs. And then there's basically an interpreter. And your DLLs are just in time interpreted essentially inside the browser. So you genuinely are running .NET IL in the browser.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty impressive. Yeah.
So here's an accusation. We've heard this before.
I know this.
You've heard this before, I'm sure, right? So why is it not this?
Why is it not Open Silverlight?
Yeah.
Mainly because the difference for me, and I'll be honest, I haven't looked loads at Open Silverlight. I know what it's doing. But essentially, Open Silverlight is looking to recreate the programming model that Silverlight had, so XAML-based and everything, except instead of using a plugin like Silverlight used in order to run, it's using WebAssembly, as far as I'm aware. The difference with Blazor is committed to adhering to web standards. So it won't use XAML as a UI language because XAML isn't a web standard. So Blazor is committed to HTML, CSS, JavaScript, WebAssembly, but you're not going to see Blazor putting XAML in as an option for the UI, based on what the team saying. I've kind of been saying sort of from the get-go, really. Obviously, you never know. There may be a point where an option arises, but as things stand at the moment, that's not something that they're looking to do, again, to the best of my knowledge from what I've seen them sort of say and do.
Okay.
So that's really the difference, I think.
Okay.
You want to demo some Blazor? You got time to do that? You think you could throw us a demo together?
Yeah. So what I thought
no
is
pressure.
I'm going to...
No pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is fun. Let me just... I'm just moving around some monitors here. Let me just screen share. This is going to... Let's see how this goes. And that one and share. And you let me know if that's come through okay.
Yep, we see it.
There we go. So what I thought I'd do is I'd talk you through progressively enhancing an HTML form to sort of so we can see a bit about sort of how you can take some HTML stuff and then you can sort of progressively enhance it with some features of Blazor and until you're sort of running fully with components and all of the benefits that gives you. Right. So let me just run this application up first of all, and I'll just show you what we're going to work on very quickly. There we go. So dragging windows around. There we go. Cool. So this is an app from a talk I do. So I'm just going to show you like a little segment here. So this is Blazor repairs. What this is essentially a Blazor WebAssembly application, and then there's an ASP.NET Core Web API behind it that's serving the data. So this is just loading up some hard-coded repairs data that I've got in this table here. But what we're going to do is on this new repairs page, we're going to go through sort of adding a form so we can add a new repair into the system and sort of see how that works.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to come over here to my project. I'm going to open up this new repair page. So for starters, this is what a Blazor component looks like. It's these .razor files that you see here. It's got some different bits to it. So you can just put normal HTML in here. We've got this funny at thing at the top. That's a directive. That's the page directive. That's because this particular component is what we call a routable component, although I prefer to use the term page components because I think people think of pages as pages, not as routable. So to me, it makes a bit more sense. And ironically, the directive is called page as well. So it just all seems to make far more sense to call them page components than routable components. But anyway, so this is a routable component. So basically what I'm saying here is when I navigate to /repairs/new, show this component. That's what this is doing currently. And then I've got some HTML, and this green tag, that's actually another component. So this is a card component I've defined. And that's doing...
Make that a little bit bigger, Chris, for the guys on mobile.
I can, yeah. Hold on, let me bump up. I've only got that 100%. So boom, how's that?
Okay, cool.
That's better. Cool. So we've got this green bit here, which is that card. That's that white card bit that's here. So that's what that is. So let me just plonk in some code on here to get going. So I've dumped in a lot of code here, so we're not going to worry too much about all of this for now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save that. I'm just going to go back to the app and we'll have a quick look at what that's done first of all, and then we'll backtrack and have a look at the bits of code that make that make this happen.
Okay.
So this is just doing a rebuild at the moment and reloading the browser. I'm desperately in need of a new laptop at the moment, so I apologize for how slow this is. My poor little 16 gigs of memory is like straining hard right now.
I remember when 16 gigs was like, wow, 16 gigs, you're never going to use that much RAM.
Yeah, we'll never need that. And then now I'm just like, oh my God, 64 gig, give it to me now.
So that's one thing right away people will know about Blazor when you're working with just HTML. You can kind of leave your app up and running, and you can make changes, and you don't have to recompile. Walk us through kind of what Blazor's doing there. Yeah. So
at the moment, if you're using what's called the WebAssembly hosted template, so that's the one I'm using here. Mm-hmm. So if I go back, you'll see there's 3 different projects in this solution. There's this client, server, and shared project. So this is a .NET Web API, which is the .server project, and the Blazor WebAssembly project is this .client project. Mm-hmm. Now, the server project actually serves the client project. It has a piece of middleware, so it serves it. Because of that, what it allows us to do is a very rudimentary kind of reload. So what I can do is make changes in my code, save it, and then I don't have to do a rebuild in Visual Studio. I can go over to the browser and hit refresh. What that then does is it tells Visual Studio to do a rebuild if there's been any changes. And then once that rebuild's finished, the browser will refresh with the changes in it.
Okay, cool.
So it's a bit like a sort of a basic hot reload. Mm-hmm. But we'll probably get onto hot reload later on. So I won't go too far into that now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So cool. So we've got our form sitting here. So this is what it looks like. This is what we've developed. We've just got a little picker and everything else here. So I'll jump back to the code. Now, what I've got here is this bit in the middle is really the bit I want to focus on. I've just got a normal HTML form. So I've got a form action here, which is going to say post this off to this API/repairs. And then I've got some normal HTML inputs, text area, select, all these kinds of things. So that's great, but that's not going to really work for us right now because firstly, if I try to post this up to my API is expecting JSON, and it's going to throw a wobbly, and it's not going to work very well. So how can we work with this form in Blazor? What do we need to do? So the first thing I need to do is have a model that defines what this form is responsible for. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is bind the various properties of that model to the various HTML inputs so that we can record that, and then we can serialize that model and post that back as JSON. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in this definition here. So I've just, in this code block down at the bottom, this is present in all Blazor components, I can just write any arbitrary C# code I wish. So I can create a field like I just have here. I could create a full C# class if I wanted to. I could put methods in here, anything I like. Okay, any valid C# pretty much will work in this code block. So I'm just sort of defining this repair model down here. So with that, I now need to bind this model to these various inputs. So Blazor comes with a directive to do that. It's well named. It's called the bind directive. Okay, so you bind things with the bind directive. Now, to save you sort of watching me scramble around typing all this stuff, again, I'm just going to pop this in. So always never formats properly. So what I've done here is for each of the various inputs, I've put the bind directive on. And what I'm saying here is for this particular input, I'm saying bind the value that's typed into it, bind it to my repair model, and bind it to the name property on that repair model. Okay. And then I've done the same for all of the other ones exactly the same way. Okay, so I've got my select, my text area. They all just bind exactly the same way. Yeah.
So I was going to ask you a question. Repair model probably in that shared project over there too, where it's defined.
Exactly right. Yeah. So one of the big advantages of Blazor, if you're doing full stack .NET development, is the ability to share models with your server and your client. So here, for example, I've got this repair model defined. That's being used by both the API project and the client project. So gone are the days like when you're doing JavaScript spars where you have to sort of have a TypeScript version of your C# class and then keep them in sync and then spend a day or two wondering why something's not worked. And then you find out you've got to update the TypeScript model. And then you fix that, and then that's kind of that 0 to 5 meme you start off with.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of what happens along the way there. So yeah, but gone are those days with Blazor if you're doing full stack C#, because you can just use the same models on both. So if I add a new model, a new parameter to my repair model, it's just instantly in both projects and job done.
Right.
So now I've got all these bits bound. That's great, but I need some way of actually like handling that, because at the moment it's still just going to post. So what I need to do is kind of hook on to the forms events really. So I'm going to do that next. So what I can do is get rid of that, and that's the wrong one. I know what I'm going to do now. Hold on. What happens when you pull code out you forgot about? Cool. So sorry, before I hook onto the event, I need something to handle the event. So what I need is a handler for the submit event on the form. So this little method here is going to handle my submitting my form off to my API. So I'm using an HTTP client, which I'm injecting at the top using the inject directive. So this is how I do dependency injection in Blazor. So I just do inject, the type, and then I give it a name, and that's it. So that will inject an instance of the HTTP client for me. So once I've got that in there, I can make my post to my API. And then once I get a response back, I can check if it's a success or not. And if it is, then I can show a success message. And I'm doing that by toggling this Boolean to true. And what that does is show this little block quote up here that's styled to say sort of green and say you saved successfully. And then I'm just going to reset the repair model by just newing it up again. So that's effectively going to blank the form down for me. So that's it, really. I don't know what that says content. That should be repair model.
And so here's what's I think people lose, like, because you're using the same name repair model that and using a bind statement, you don't have to write any JavaScript to like do get element by ID, pull the value back. It's instantaneous when those things, the values change. The instance of the repair model also changes.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when you blank it out, then it just clears the form. You don't have to go through and clear all the HTML and that's, to me, when I see this the first time when you're doing it in Blazor, to me that's the coolest thing about this framework that you get, or one of the coolest things. I mean,
definitely, yeah, completely agree. It's things just work, and they kind of work how you would kind of expect. If I new up the model, all my values get reset, and then my form gets reset because they're all bound to that model. So yeah, it does all just kind of work, which is good.
Yeah, even in an ASP page, you would have to do that. Like you'd have to manage your clear out and do that stuff and write a clear and go get all the elements using jQuery or JavaScript or something like that. Yeah. So definitely. And it makes your code so clean. And once you understand what it's doing. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I mean, because what we're going to do now is we're just going to get rid of all this stuff at the top. We're actually going to just bind to an event, and the way we do that is you just literally go on submit, and this is what I like, is just on submit equals, and then I can just go handle form submit, which is my method down below.
So good.
How intuitive is that?
Yeah.
It literally form on submit, handle form submit.
Right.
It just like comes together and it just makes sense. So what's going to happen now is that when I click my save button down below, I've got my button as type submit here. That's going to submit the form. But what Blazor is going to do now is, because I've used this special syntax, I'm hooking onto a Blazor version of the on submit event. So this isn't the JavaScript on submit event. So just to be clear, that would be a JavaScript on submit event. So by putting the little in front of it, I now make it kind of a Blazor version of it. So now what I'm saying is for Blazor, intercept that on submit event of that form. And when you do that, call my handler. So then that's going to call this bit down here, and that's going to post everything off to the API and all that.
Another thing that's cool is like it knows that handle some form submit is actually present. So like if you misspelled it or typed it wrong or whatever, it wouldn't compile. Yeah,
exactly right. So this has all got, if I go, I get like, I was just doing control space there, like, it knows what I want. It's all got IntelliSense. That all just works. So it's kind of that rich IDE experience you're kind of used to as a .NET developer. You know, so that's all good. So if I save that and go back over here and refresh, now, hopefully now, once this rebuilds, and hopefully it'll be a little bit quicker than it was last time, maybe, probably not. We should be able to see this actually do something.
So we can ask if you watch football. Do you watch football while this is compiling?
That ain't drawing anything. Not a huge amount, actually. Don't watch a huge amount of sport at the moment.
All right,
I don't know why. But yeah, just haven't been recently. So, but anyway, right. So let's try and put let's put some stuff in here. So like we've got John Smith. He's got an issue. He's got he's got a broken tap. That will do. So that's probably going to require a plumber, and he's going to have a phone number like that. So if I hit save now, voila, we have got new repair saved successfully. And if I go to view repairs, there's Mr. John Smith. He's got his broken tap and everything. So this has all gone up to the API. It's been accepted and everything. So that's all good. The only problem is this. So I've just clicked save. I've not put anything in, and it's posted. And if you go over here, we've now got this like blank data, which is really not ideal. So if you've ever tried to do like data validation with HTML, like you've got HTML5 validation, so you can do that. But that's always not like great and doesn't maybe give you as much rich validation rules as you maybe want to use and things like this. So let's see if we can kind of enhance things a bit more. What we can do instead of using sort of all of these HTML elements is we can actually start moving over to some components that Blazor provides us out of the box. Now, by moving over to these components, we can start to get a much sort of richer UI development experience. We can do more stuff we can be more clever about what we're doing. So the first thing I'm going to do before I do anything else is I'm just going to go to my repair model. I'm just going to update this with some data annotations. So I'm just going to pop that in. So the first thing is what a data annotation is, probably, just in case people don't know. So data annotations are a way of kind of specifying the validation rules for properties on your models. So this is part of the ASP.NET Core framework. It's the default validation mechanism, if you like. And the way it works is, as you can see here, you just decorate your properties with the validation rules you want to apply. So, you know, I want name to be required. So I've got this required attribute, and then I've specified an error message to show when that's not been satisfied. I've got this minimum length here for the issue. It must be sort of 10 characters long. And then I've got this wonderful, like, really easy to understand,
really short regular expression.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I'm sure I won't go into that because we all know.
We got it. Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, we all know what that does. Yeah. We'll just breeze past that one. Definitely didn't copy and paste from Stack Overflow.
So that's something you do once, right? And you never ever do again.
ever do it again? Yeah, I will copy and paste it from this sample for the rest of my career. So that's going to validate that we've got a valid UK phone number. So that's one way of doing it. There are other ways. So there's a very popular alternative to data validation, data annotations, is called Fluent validation. I don't know if either of you guys have used it or not.
I haven't.
Okay, so it allows you to specify your validation rules using like a Fluent syntax, which is really cool. So I've got one of my Blazor components that I build is called Blazor Fluent Validation, and it is there to enable you to use that in Blazor. So you can swap out the validation systems really easy, and I'll show you how to do that actually in this next bit. So now we've got the rules on our model, right? That's the first thing. Now, what I want to do here is just really highlight the value of that shared code, because I've not done anything with that UI side, okay? We've still got that same form that we had before, right? So I'm just going to let the app reload again. So we'll talk amongst ourselves. It really honestly isn't this bad normal. It really is, because my laptop is just not enjoying life right now.
Right.
So there we go. Cool. So if I go over to this new repair and I hit save, I'm clicking the button, okay? But nothing's happening this time around. So if I go into the browser tools and have a look, we can actually probably see something going on here. So you can see I'm now getting a 400 back from my API. So let me just zoom in on that as well, because this is like ridiculously tiny. So I'm getting back a 400 from the API. So if I go and look at that in the network tab, I'll just bring one up there. And where is it? Cool. You'll actually see in preview, I'm getting validation errors back from the API. So just putting them validation rules on that shared model, the API is already validating for me. So I've done actually the most important job now. My API is protected. Okay, so my API is no longer accepting the invalid state of that model. All that I've got left now is to make the user experience nicer, because as a user, I don't know that that's gone wrong. I didn't know I had to fill that stuff out. There's nothing to tell me there. So sort of now the important bit's done by securing the server. Now let's concentrate on making the UI nicer. So we'll get rid of that. And then now that's done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this whole form with something else. I'm going to replace it with this component called an edit form. So this actually is a component provided by Blazor out of the box. And it is, as you can see from the way I've done this, it's a drop-in replacement for a normal HTML form tag. So there's a few things that have changed here. So I'm going to walk us through it all. So first of all, with the form tag has become an edit form. That's the first thing. Now, the edit form itself requires a couple of pieces of information from us in order to be able to function. It has a parameter called model, where we have to tell it the model that it's responsible for. So I'm just passing in that repair model that was defined down there in that private field that we saw earlier. And then what I've done as well is I've hooked on to the onValid submit event. So the edit form has 3 different events you can actually bind to. It has an onSubmit event, which is the same as the HTML form component we were looking at originally. But it also has these two helper versions, which is onValidSubmit and onInValidSubmit. Now, the great thing about these is that my handler will now only get called when the model's valid.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
I don't have to worry about validating my model anymore, which is really cool because I'm really lazy.
Right.
And this is brilliant. So what this means now is my handlers that I wrote originally that we saw a second ago, that doesn't have to change. I'm not going to put any logic in here to go like, model.isValid and then do something. Right. I can just leave it as this, because if it hits this code, the model's already been validated for me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So how's it going to do that? Well, we need to actually add something in for that. We need to tell it how to validate our form. So in order to do that, we actually have to specify a component inside of the edit form that knows how to validate the model. So this is called a data annotations validator if you're using data annotations. So this is what I was saying about a second ago. My Blazor Fluent validation package gives you a different option. And this is another great example of how easy it is to customize Blazor. If you don't want to use data annotations, you just swap that out for the Fluent validations validator. That's the only line you have to change. Obviously, you have to have different validation rules on your model. But in terms of your UI code, that's the only thing you have to change. And now the form will validate using a completely different validation mechanism. Just one component, one line. That's it. Job done. Whole different validation mechanism. It's brilliant. It's really, really, really good. The other change that's happened here is that I'm no longer using the normal HTML input tags either. I've swapped these out for Blazor alternatives. So Blazor has an alternative for all of the standard ones. So we have an input text here for an input of type text. We have an input text area, and we have an input select. They are literally drop-in replacements for the existing ones, but they do some magic behind the scenes, which I'm going to explain in a second. The only other thing I've done as well is I slightly changed the syntax of the bind directive. So what I'm doing now, because I'm binding to a component now rather than an HTML element, I have to say what particular property of the component I'm binding to. So the input text and all of the various input components expose a property called value. So I'm binding to that instead now. When you use bind on its own with HTML elements, it knows what an HTML element binds to. So it knows that an input has a value property and it binds to that automatically. But because we're using a component, we have to tell it which one. So that's the reason for the slight difference there. So that's now swapped for components. So that's all that bit. So the last thing we need to do here in order to actually see something is just to have somewhere to output the actual validation errors. So what I can do here is I can put in something called a validation summary component. And this is going to sound familiar if you've done anything with MVC or Raised Pages. There's a tag helper of a very similar name. And what's going to happen now, where that validation summary tag is, it's just going to output any validation messages. So if I save that now and we go back over to our form and refresh, TikTok. Gives me an opportunity to drink some water, which is good.
While we're doing that, Mr. Matrix says he's definitely going to check out Blazor.
Nice.
Cool.
So that's cool. And Phil says he loves Blazor.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah.
So, the moment of truth.
Bam.
We've now got validation on our UI. So this is basically what that validation summary is getting us. It's getting this block of all of the issues that are wrong with the form. Now, to talk about using those input components instead of using normal HTML elements, the reason really for doing that is because that hooks us into the validation system. So all of that hard work of understanding the validation system, that's all done for you if you use the built-in components. And some of the things it gives you really is the UI stuff. So for example, here you'll see there's red outlines around these boxes because they're not meeting the validation rules. And that's because the input components apply a class when they're invalid. They also apply a class when they're invalid. So if I go in here and inspect this particular piece of HTML, you'll see here it's got this class of invalid on it. So if I now go in here and type in a name, so John Smith, and tab out, you might have seen that flick over. It's now marked as valid. it's also marked as modified. So if you want to style it in an appropriate way based on any of those things, you can. So for example, in this app, I've done it so that they get a red outline when they're invalid and they get a green outline when they're valid. That's what I've done. So that's it. I think the only other thing I'd say about this is I'm not a huge fan of validation summaries, because I think errors should always be as close as possible to where they are. So the last thing we can do is we can actually remove the validation summary component. And instead of doing that, I can just highlight this and I'll drop in some more code to save myself doing a load of typing. That's all the same stuff. All that's happened is I've added an extra component under each one called validation message. And validation message, I just say which particular property I want to show validation messages for. So I've done one for each of the properties on that model. And now when I go back and I refresh this,
that's cool. So yeah, you can take that like block of messages and put them in context. That's very cool.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, this is great for a form this size.
Yeah.
But if you've got a big form,
you don't want all the errors stuck at the top.
And it hits a bit, and you're like, "Why has it gone?" And you scroll all the way up to the top to find out what's gone wrong. So now, if we hit save, we get the validation messages right into where we are. So now I can go through and I can do what I did before. So I've got John Smith. He's got a broken tap. He's a plumber, and I now need to put in a valid phone number. As you can see, it's not valid, so I can now go in, correct it. Now it's valid. I can hit save. It submits. And over here, I've got my John Smith in my thing.
Very cool.
So that was my demo. That was HTML forms to Blazor forms in 10 minutes-ish.
Cool.
I love it. That was very cool.
Yeah. We got a question from Troy. If you can post that one up there.
Let's see.
We got a couple minutes here.
Yeah, we got some questions. Troy's asking, can you use any database with Blazor, like MySQL?
Yeah, so as I said, Blazor's a UI framework. So what you use on your back end is totally up to you. So you can go nuts, use whatever you want. I mean, what I'd really like to as well highlight is the fact that because Blazor is a UI framework, you don't even have to be using .NET on your back end. You can have a Node back end. You can have PHP or I don't know, whatever else you want to use as a back end. Any other type of API, it's not a problem. GraphQL endpoints, things like that. They'll all work with Blazor. Blazor's got packages, I think, already for GraphQL and things like that. So, and there's also stuff even for doing the newer the gRPC bits as well with Blazor. So, like I say, Blazor will work with any backend. It doesn't need to be .NET. As I've been trying to evangelize, .NET is not just a Windows only thing anymore. It's cross-platform. It works everywhere. Linux, Mac. Everywhere. So yeah, use it wherever you like.
You got to keep telling everybody that.
Yeah.
Just got to keep telling everybody that.
Go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just going to say, Ashim says Blazor finally a good name out of Microsoft. we do have a running joke here that Microsoft don't name things very well. Even Scott Hansen was on here saying like, okay, here's how we named it .NET 5. It's like, what's bigger than 3? Like,
it's true that there's a lot of very literal naming comes out of Microsoft. I think. Well, my example earlier about page components and routable components, there's a great example. Like I said in the documentation, you'll always find them referred to as routable components because that's what they are. You route to them. So it's a very literal name, except you will always talk about it as a page. And like I say, the directive's called a page directive. So, but Blazor's a great name, and we almost didn't get it. We almost didn't. So it did get renamed.
Oh, did it really?
Those of us who have been in the .NET in the Blazor world since the very beginning, there was a period where it got renamed to Razor components. So there's actually, because there's two flavors of Blazor which we haven't got into yet. There's the Blazor WebAssembly and Blazor Server, and the Blazor Server version got renamed to Razor components, and then the client WebAssembly version was still Blazor. And then that was a way of differentiating, and then that got really, really confusing because you had individual components in a Blazor WebAssembly app are Razor components. So you had a Blazor WebAssembly app that had Razor components in it, but then you had the Razor components framework, which was Blazor Server, that also had Razor components in it. That was not good for anybody. And it's another great example of the new, sort of where Microsoft are at now, the community fed back that is a bad idea. Like, this is going to cause lots of confusion. It's not going to work. And the team listened and they backtracked.
That's
and they're not
even then ASP, we had Razor Pages. It was just going to be like, it was just a nightmare. Like what so
too many razors. Too many
razors.
And Blazor is a cool name. It sticks in your head. Like,
I agree. It's a good name. It is a good name. It has a good logo too. I actually like the branding of it, which again, Microsoft don't do very well in a lot of places. I'm not a fan. We always make fun of the .NET branding. It's terrible. But the Blazor branding I actually like. I think it's good. It fits.
Yeah, definitely.
So read this one. I think this is a good question.
Oh yeah, what's Nimrod saying? It says, I am using Blazor WebAssembly, but the auto recomplete won't work for me. Did he define something to make it work in the config? Maybe it does not work with PWA.
Oh, the auto recompile. Yes,
I guess that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain I know what this is. So when you're that template I showed you was, like I said, that's the Blazor WebAssembly hosted template. So that has the ASP.NET Core backend to it. That's the bit that allows the auto recompile to work. If you're using a standalone Blazor WebAssembly project, so you don't have a backend for it, you just got a Blazor WebAssembly project on its own. Currently, auto rebuild isn't supported in that mode at the moment. So I would guess that's the case here. Is it Nimrod? I would guess he's got a standalone Blazor WebAssembly project, in which case, unfortunately, it just doesn't work yet.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. To Adam's question here, how do you feel about WebWindow? What is WebWindow?
WebWindow. So WebWindow is it's another one from Steve Sanderson, the creator of Blazor. So WebWindow is what's the way? I guess you could say it's like an evolution on Electron.
Yeah.
So what WebWindow does is where you've got, actually, let me start that the other way around. Let's talk about Electron first. So where you've got Electron, which has got like Node.js and Chromium, that kind of allows you to interact with the operating system and renders your UI and all this kind of stuff. What Steve did with WebWindow is he sort of went, well, we don't need Node.js because we've got .NET Core. It's cross-platform. It runs anywhere. And really, all modern operating systems have kind of a built-in web renderer anyway. So like on Windows, it's an Edge thing, I think. I don't know the details about it. On Mac OS, it's WebKit, I think. Yeah. So what Steve did was he went, okay, well, I'll get rid of Node.js and I'll get rid of Chromium because we don't need that either. And now my Electron app is now about 10 megs because I've got rid of all of the bloat. It's not 800 megs anymore. Then uses .NET Core as the engine and then delegates the UI rendering to whatever the native renderer is on the particular operating system it's running on. So what that does is create sort of a similar experience to what you got with Electron app, except it's on a diet. So there was some examples of some code size like cut downs. So I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's something like pretty impressive. Like 120 meg app is now like 30 meg. And instead of using like however many gigs of memory or megs of memory, it now uses like a third of that or less. A huge performance increase or lack of or cut down on resource usage and things like that. So it's a really interesting project. It's experimental. It's not been committed to as a product as far as I'm aware, at least. It's just kind of one of Steve's side projects. But it's all available on GitHub and you can play around with it. It's a great bit of technology. Rumors are he wrote it on a plane on the way back from the conference. I heard in a couple of hours because that's how good he is.
Okay, that's impressive.
Yeah, but I don't know how true that is, but yeah.
Let's just go with it. Let's make it true from here on in.
Let's go with it. It's fine. But yeah, that's what WebWindow is. I personally, I'm less interested in desktop development personally, so I've not really done much with it. But I think it's pretty impressive. And if I was building Electron apps, yeah, I'd probably be interested in what's going to happen with it. But
right.
Okay, I got one more for you here. Let's read this one, Kevin.
Yeah, so Phil wants to know, can you have real-time updates in Blazor? Or would that be gRPC? For example, a calendar app. Somebody has the main form up and other users enter information that will show up in real time.
Yeah. So again, like, how would you build a real-time app with, anywhere else? You would probably, if you're doing .NET, you'd use SignalR. I'm assuming, and Blazor is no different. So you can use SignalR with Blazor, and you can construct a real-time app using that the same way as you would any other sort of UI framework, really. If you're using Blazor Server, you can get a bit more funky with it, because that uses SignalR under the hood, and you can do certain things to sort of do it in a slightly different way. But generally speaking, the answer is you would use SignalR. I don't think there's a lot more.
Okay.
There's probably not a lot more to that one, to be honest.
Right, and you can gRPC is just a different kind of real-time thing that they're talking about, like using. I'm missing the term now, but like behind the scenes is different than SignalR, for as like the transfer.
Yeah, it's a remote procedure call, isn't it?
Yeah,
essentially,
right.
and you use a compiled class,
right?
So you compile your client essentially from your server methods, and then that client is used by your client application to call the server, and it uses a very efficient binary kind of exchange that's thing, but it's all it's all like
instead of JSON. Yeah,
that's it, instead of JSON. So it's very it's a lot smaller than JSON, a lot more efficient. I think it's quicker as well, generally speaking. And you also get the benefit of you use types. So you define your types in your gRPC setup, and they automatically get serialized and deserialized for you. You don't have to worry about JSON serializers and things like that. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So I don't know if this question is going to be in your realm or not, but I'm going to throw it up. If not, maybe one of you guys can answer it. So Menz is asking, may you please talk about Blazor mobile bindings and Xamarin and the differences therein? And
yes,
from South Africa.
South Africa. Yeah.
Let's go.
So I did a blog series on this.
Oh, awesome.
Blazor mobile bindings. It's brilliant. So yeah, let's pick this apart. So Blazor mobile bindings is an experiment. Okay, it's not a product. It's an experiment, and basically what it is it's an experiment to understand how much appetite there is out there for using Blazor's programming model to write native cross-platform applications. And under the hood, what it does is it uses the Xamarin Forms technology. Now, what that looks like is pretty interesting. So I've just sort of shown writing that UI for that form. You use essentially the same, let's say, the same programming model, the same program experience. So you'd write a form out basically the same kind of way, except under the hood it would be substituting for Xamarin Forms equivalent controls. So as a web developer, if you know Blazor, you can very quickly sort of understand the sort of slight difference in some of the component names and things like that, and then you kind of can just get on with building a cross-platform mobile app that under the hood is using Xamarin Forms. So it's a really interesting one. The person behind that is a guy from Microsoft, Elon Lipton. I think I might have got the pronunciation wrong. So if that's wrong, I apologize. But doing a fantastic job. It's all open source on GitHub. He takes pull requests and everything. There'll probably be a new version out soon. Actually, I think there's a new preview due fairly soon. It's really good. The end game of this, I believe, from what's been said, is that I don't know if you guys know or not, but Xamarin is kind of being evolved to a new framework called .NET Maui.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So Maui is going to be like the evolution of Xamarin Forms, and it's going to bring with it some options for writing these mobile apps in different ways. So instead of just having to use XAML like we have done previously with Xamarin, it's going to introduce a sort of C# based way of writing UI that's similar to, I think, kind of like reactive programming, I think, from what I understand. It's got a name and it completely escapes me right now as to what it's called.
It'll change.
Sorry?
It'll change. They'll change it by the next year.
So there's that model, but they're also looking at potentially bringing in the Blazor programming model into Maui. So Blazor mobile bindings, I think, is that experiment to understand that appetite. And I think from what I've seen, it looks like that decision's pretty much been made. It will be in Maui at some point, not initially, but it will be there. So basically, if you learn to build Blazor apps for the web, you have got a very low learning curve to move over to building Xamarin, like cross-platform mobile apps, and not just mobile apps, like desktop and everything, with the same programming model. So you've already learned how to write it. It's just understanding some slightly different controls and bits, and yeah, you're good to go. So if you learn Blazor now, theoretically, you could build websites, you could build native apps, you could build desktop apps, all using sort of one programming model and sort of one set of skills, which is quite I think a tempting and quite appealing option, I think, to me anyway, rather than having to learn sort of 3 or 4 different ways of doing things. So
it's exciting. Yeah, it's definitely exciting. So we're up on our lunchtime hour here. Where can they find you and talk to us about a little bit about Blazor? I know you have a component library on GitHub and a little bit about
used.
Yeah, I'm using it. Yeah, I'm using the type ahead last year for a project that I'm working on. So like, it's kind of cool. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, cool. So I've been in Blazor since the very beginning, like before the very first preview came out, and sort of along the way, you just kind of realize you want to, use controls that you're used to. So Blazor was sort of a project that started a long time ago, where I was like just trying to build some components that did some things that I was used to from other UI frameworks, and it's grown from there. So now it's there's quite a few packages in there now. There's the type ahead, as you said, Bobby, that you're using. Yeah. There's a modal component. There's a toast component. There's the fluent validator that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about forms. I've got a dynamic menu generating component, although I haven't given that much love for a long time, and that really does need some love. I'm trying to think. I've got some other bits as well. There's some other bits in there. I'm trying to make Blazor like a bit of as much of a community experience as possible as well. So I also try and host projects from other people in the community. Mr. Magoo, who asked one of the questions you put up earlier on, is a friend of mine, and he.
Oh, that's awesome!
And he's got a couple of projects hosted on Blazor. He's just most recently went live with version 1 of his Blazor video component, which is a wrapper around the HTML5 video APIs as Blazor components. So you can hook in. He's done some work to bubble up all the events and stuff properly, so you can use that now to display videos on Blazor pages. He's done a fantastic job. So all I'm trying to do with Blazor is for projects like that. I've done things like set up all the DevOps pipeline and bits, just so that like people like Mr. Magoo can just focus on his value-added sort of proposition, and I'll sort of take care of the boilerplate and hosting it and having it in a central place. So
have you seen any of your things from Blazor show up in like Blazor? Has that happened yet? You think it's going to happen?
Yeah, so it was quite cool that Blackit.NET Conf, so Daniel Roth was showing some demos, and he used my local storage library. That was it, local storage and session storage. I have 2 libraries that do those. Yeah. He used those in some of the demos he did in .NET Conf. So to see sort of your components being used at a huge kind of Microsoft event is quite a humbling experience. So that was quite cool. And I know he was playing around with the type head, I think, as well, for one of the demos. So that was pretty awesome.
And then you point to it and say, "Mom, look, he's using my component," and she's like, "What are you talking about?"
Exactly. Yeah. My wife was. She's like, "I don't care. I'm not bothered."
She's like, "Who and what?"
Yeah, I'm not bothered at all. You're interrupting me binging on Netflix or whatever. So So that was really cool. So that's kind of one of the things I try to do for the community is build those components out and make them as good as possible. So I'm quite lucky. I've had a few people who have helped with contributions, which is always good. There's always good sort of suggestions coming in through issues and stuff, which is always great. So that's always good.
And you're in the early stages of running a book too, right?
Yeah. So so I'm writing a book called Blazor in Action for Manning. So I'm sort of, again, it's very humbling to be sort of working on a book in an in-action series, because I've learned a lot from various authors of in-action books, especially when you sort of look at some of the people who have written books like John Skeet and sort of Andrew Locke and stuff. So to sort of be working on a book in the same series as kind of people like that it's pretty humbling and nerve-wracking at the same time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So I'm just starting on chapter 3 of that at the moment. So hopefully soon we'll have it out for so it's due next year, but it should be out on what's called MEEP, which is Manning Early Access Program. So that's where members of the public can buy the book while it's being written. So when we go to MEEP, you'll get what I've written so far, and then you'll basically get like a chapter a month as I write it. And
that's cool. I like that model.
Yeah, so it's a brilliant model. And what's really nice for me is that then I get feedback from people who are reading the book as I'm writing it. So while obviously I'm trying to make my best guess at what is going to be useful for people, obviously I'm not always going to be right. You
need a consensus.
Yeah. So it's an opportunity for people to buy the book at that early stage. You get to be able to feedback directly to me about what you thought of the chapter, improvements, things I've missed, things you want to see, things that maybe I put in that you don't think are relevant, stuff like that, which is good. And then I think you even get a hard copy, you get a physical copy at the end, I think, as well.
Well, that's cool. I like that model.
I think so.
I'm going to look that up. That's amazing.
The program. Yeah, it's a great program. It really is. It really is impressive. So that should be out fairly soon. I think probably when I finish chapter 3, that's probably when we'll go to MEEP. So hopefully in the next few weeks. So that's been keeping me busy as well. And then obviously I've got my blog, and which I'll be honest, I'd like to say on a platform like this is I'll apologize to anybody now who notices that I haven't blogged for a while.
That's okay.
But Andrew Locke is a legend. That man is churning out a blog post a week and writing a book, and I have no clue. I don't think he sleeps. He obviously doesn't need rest. I'm desperately trying to do a blog post just to try and keep it ticking over. By the time I've done the blog post, the day job, sort of doing bits.
We do that exact same thing about creators. We're like, how are they doing so many videos? I don't know. There's like 15 people there working on this stuff. I don't get it.
Right.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So I'm trying to get some done, but I haven't posted anything for quite a while. And I used to blog like once a week. So it's really weird for me not have anything on my blog for like probably what's now a month and a half, 2 months. So I really want to get something out on it soon, but I'm just running out of hours in the day.
Exactly. Yeah. So, all right, cool. What, I guess my final question is, where do you think this is going with .NET 5? Anything going to really change in November, or do you think they're just trying to get it over to .NET 5 and then they'll go?
Yeah. So I think .NET 5 is going to be a really interesting one. I mean, obviously it's the first release of this amalgamated platform, which will be a really interesting thing to see. There's some big things coming for .NET 5, I think, for Blazor. I've actually got them over here on the list because I can't remember them all, because there are a lot. A lot of these are actually coming in the next preview. So .NET 5 Preview 8 should be out sort of in the next few weeks, like a couple of weeks probably. And there was a .NET Community Stand-Up, ASP.NET Community Stand-Up last week, where the Blazor team were on. They kind of unveiled all this stuff, which is just amazing. So just to give you a kind of taste, there's sort of big increases in performance for Blazor WebAssembly. So one of the the big issues with Blazor WebAssembly in its current guise is that there's not amazing performance out of it in certain scenarios. So the team worked really hard on improving the runtime performance and the rendering performance of Blazor WebAssembly, and there's some very significant improvements coming in .NET 5 for that. So that's a big one. Blazor will also be using all the amalgamated .NET 5 core framework libraries as well, which is all part of that .NET 5 migration. You're going to have so there's some big things. So one of the things that was a huge request from people is CSS isolation in components, similar to what you get in Angular and React and Vue. That's going to be in .NET 5, so that's a huge one. It's probably probably one of the most, if not the most requested feature in Blazor. So that's going to be in .NET 5, and that's going to be in the .NET 8 preview that'll be out in a couple of weeks. So that's one to look out for. Lazy loading will be in .NET 5 preview out as well. So that's another big one. There's going to be an auto refresh with .NET Watch. So there's going to be the kind of a step closer to hot reload with that. So it'll be a case of you can start up your app using .NET Watch, and then it will look for changes and kind of automatically recompile your app when stuff changes.
Oh, cool.
And then refresh the browser for you. You don't actually have to go. So where you saw me refreshing the browser, that triggered a rebuild, then the browser refreshed. Now, if you change your code, hit save, that triggers a rebuild and then triggers the browser to refresh without you doing anything.
Right.
But you don't get things like consistent state, so you will lose state in between and stuff. But yeah, so a bit closer. They're also releasing some services to help you deal with things like improving SEO and stuff on your Blazor WebAssembly app. So there'll be a title and metadata and link components that will allow you to set the title of a page. So one of the things with spars is you move between pages, and it's very difficult to sort of tell the difference because the main host page has got the title element on it.
Right.
So they're going to provide some stuff out of the box that allows you to change the title. So as you move between pages, you can update the title in the tab. And there's going to be like little things like being able to set focus on a UI element without having to use JavaScript interop, which is what you have to do at the moment. You'll just be able to use that natively in Blazor. It still uses interop, but it just does it under the hood, so you don't have to worry about it. So there's quite a lot of things coming. There's protected browser storage as a package as well. That will be coming in. There's not an input radio button, actually. It's the only one out of all of the kind of standard HTML controls that aren't normally there, don't have a Blazor equivalent. So that will be coming as well. So yeah, lots and lots of stuff. And then I think the only other thing that's left out of all of that stuff is there's going to be some drag and drop stuff coming for .NET 5 as well. File upload and just more performance optimizations, virtualization and stuff. So that will all be in .NET 5. So lots and lots of really good, interesting stuff coming for Blazor in .NET 5.
All right, cool.
Very cool.
I know that a lot of people are excited about it. I am. I think it's really cool. And so anyway, so tell Kevin where they can find Chris, and we'll let him go because
I actually put it in the chat already. You can actually see it in the description of the video too below. You can find Chris's website down there, and all your links are there. I did notice. You can find you on whatever platforms you're on. It's all linked.
Yeah, they're all in there. They're all there. Get me anywhere.
All right, well, and so you're on Twitter, or you on LinkedIn too as well?
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter as Chris_Sainty. So feel free to message me and whatever on there. I'm on LinkedIn. It's Chris-Sainty and whatever their naming convention is. I don't know. Right. Links are all on my blog, so all at chrissainty.com. You can find the link. GitHub, all that stuff. It's all there.
Right.
So.
All right. Well, that's great. So, we'll let you go today, Chris, and we'll just for us it's lunchtime. So as we know, we got here at lunch. So
nice, yeah, dinner time here.
You're an amazing guest, and I think you have a lot of value to bring to the audience here. And I'm going to keep reading your blog and using your controls. So
cool.
You're working on my movie site. So
lovely stuff. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah,
thanks, Chris. It's been great.
Thanks, Chris. All right, so that was awesome. So
yes, very cool. I learned a lot.
Yes, it's really cool. Well, I hope this helps. We'll be back.
We'll be back Wednesday. We'll be back live again Wednesday, and we'll probably have the different platform Wednesday too. Hopefully, if it's all set up and everything works, we'll be back with a slightly different platform.
That's good.
So, yeah, all right. With a brand new intro.
All right. So I hope this helps, guys. Good luck and keep coding. We'll see you on Wednesday.
See you guys later.